Good morning everyone, thank you all very much for coming, that's very good of you. My name is Kenneth Bannerman, I'm the Director General, the founder and head of the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust, or as we also call it for short, ABCT. We're the world's first national airfield charity, and if you type in our initials on Google, for example, you'll find our 3,000 page website extremely easily. And one of the very main things we do is that we erect commemorative memorials like today to disused airfields right across the UK. So we've been in Northern Ireland since Thursday, and just in case you're not aware, on Friday we unveiled the first of our 4 memorials at Ballyhalbert. And then yesterday we moved along to the Lough Erne and unveiled 2 more at the 2 main flying boat bases there at Castle Artsdale and Killadece. So this will be our 4th memorial in 3 days. And now just before I give a quick speech about the Airfield's history and why this all matters at a more big picture level, may I introduce you to Mr. Jim Shannon, who whatever you'd like to say, please.
Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. And thanks as well too, because I mean the Ballyhalbert Community District Association are very much involved in any of these projects. They've got a real heart for this village, and so have I as a member of Parliament. I'm particularly encouraged by what you do, Ken, and I wouldn't be entirely familiar with the trust and what you do until this morning, and some of the background I've got before I came down today as well. So thank you for all you do. For us in this Ballyhalbert world, well, I wasn't here in 1940 or 1941, and probably none of us, or very few of us, would have been. But these houses wouldn't have been here. Caravan Park wouldn't have been here. You'd have had a Spartan of houses sprinkled across the countryside. But what you did have here was a very, very active airfield. Entrenched in the community with a special arrangement and alignment with the Polish airmen. So therefore for us, the airfield in Ballyhalbert means a lot. We're the first council area, and I know I'm a member of Parliament, it is my council area of Ards and North Down, and we have a memorial in Ards Town to the Polish airmen, the first in Northern Ireland and one of few across the whole of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So we have a special attachment with this airfield, with its attachment with the community, and how it has ingrained itself in the history of where we are. I'm particularly pleased that yourself, Ken, and the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust have taken the time, the effort, the finance and the time to come down and do something like this. We would hope over the next period of time, and we think we can do that, and we've been in discussions with the people who now own the Caravan Park, and they're very, very keen, along with others in the area who are also keen to see something more touchable, feasible and positive. And although we have the ruin, we'd like to perhaps maybe do something more with that, maybe in a museum type idea, and that's one of the projects that will be pursued locally. But I just want to say thank you for what you do. Thank you for taking the time, the effort and the financial commitment, which you very clearly have done, and for reminding us all in this area that Ballyhalbert had an important strategic role to play in the Second World War, and we in this area are very, very proud of our history, very, very proud of what our forefathers did and what they did to preserve the liberty, the freedom that we all have, and which we will hold to in the future. Thanks so much. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much for your kind words. Thank you. Well, just give you a quick background to the Airfield's history and why this all matters at a bigger picture level. Ballyhalbert was one of the most important airfields in Northern Ireland in World War II. There was a tiny handful of airfields in the early part of the world conflict, but as things progressed, it became very obvious that far more airfields in this country were needed. And Ballyhalbert was one of the earlier examples. The land was requisitioned for military use in the summer of 1940, and then it took the usual year or so for the airfield to be built. By all accounts, the cost at the time was close on £1 million. So it was developed as a fighter sector station. Before that, Northern Ireland's most famous airfield of all, of course, Aldergrove, served in that capacity. But more airfields were needed. So Ballyhalbert took over as a fighter sector station when it opened in June 1941. They'd hoped to open it a little bit earlier, but there were just some construction delays and so on, around about April. Once it got going, a whole procession of RAF fighter squadrons came through here. I mean, I won't name the whole lot, of course, but the first one was number 245 Squadron that came from Aldergrove. And then among other squadrons that appeared here were, for example, number 504, number 153 Squadron. That was quite important because not only did it fly night fighters as opposed to day fighters, but they were actually the first occupants at Ballykelly Airfield, where we unveiled a similar memorial just on Friday. And that squadron incidentally ended up in North Africa at the end of 1942, although they still remained in Ballyhalbert for a little while afterwards before they fully relocated to Africa. And then also, as Mr. Shannon said, we mustn't forget, of course, the very strong Polish connection. So you had number 303 Squadron, which came from legendary Battle of Britain Airfield, North Olton, edge of London, towards the end of 1943. And then in the spring of 1944, it moved again to Horn in southeast England, one of these advanced landing grounds that were used in the run-up to D-Day. This was a very busy fighter airfield. Lots of squadrons came through here. There was also significant RAF support use. You had flights here that flew Whistling Lysanders for target towing. But it was also notable from about, say, second half of 1943, that Fleet Air Arm squadrons were starting to appear in strength as well, although this was, at the time, an RAF station. And so, as well as the usual Spitfires and aircraft like that, there were also notably the Spitfire's naval equivalent, the Seafire. So the squadrons built up in naval terms, especially into 1944. This also, as with the RAF right from the beginning, involved Ballyhalbert's satellite airfield Kirkistown, just down the road here, famously today the motor racing circuit, where this time last year we unveiled one of our first two memorials in Northern Ireland. Bear in mind, it's just maybe worth mentioning, I've already said to one or two of you, we've actually been trying to get a memorial at Ballyhalbert since as early as 2007. Wow. And just also bear in mind that this is before we unveiled any memorials in the UK. There were just one or two delays for various reasons, but it wasn't for the lack of effort. And I've known one or two people, or at least over the phone anyhow, who I've been in touch with since that time as well. For what it's worth, to just about our oldest web link on the website is for Ballyhalbert history. So the area just has known of ABCT for years. Anyhow, just coming back to the wartime history, the Fleet Air Arm eventually acquired control of this airfield in the summer of 1945. And it became known by its ship name. They were all named after birds, with one exception, HMS Corncrake. And Kirkistown, meanwhile, became HMS Corncrake too. The only slightly strange thing was that, in comparison with before, although the Fleet Air Arm still did significantly use Ballyhalbert, it maybe just wasn't quite so much as it had been before. And then come the autumn of 1945, due to various policy changes, the Fleet Air Arm decided to relinquish Ballyhalbert, and for that matter to Kirkistown. So it eventually, in January 1946, passed back to the RAF, but instead of Fighter Command, Coastal Command. However, Coastal Command, for whatever reason, decided it couldn't find any real use for the airfield, as again with Kirkistown. And therefore, in mid-February 1946, the airfield was officially handed over to the Northern Ireland government, notably for storage use. in particular, furniture was stored here. Now, it's always fascinating to find out the histories of the UK's airfields after World War II. They started to wind down, they closed, and in their current states today. So Ballyhalbert is quite interesting in its own right. It was very notable in 1958 that world famous aircraft ejector seat maker Martin Baker, and funnily enough, we actually made a leading employee from that company during our last unveiling sortie in southeast England at a place called Langley to the west of London near Slough, which made half the Hawker Hurricanes that were built. And the first fighters that were here at Ballyhalbert were Hurricanes. So there's a connection, all sorts of connections with the UK's airfields. Anyhow, Martin Baker was seriously considering actually buying the airfield as a second production line alongside its other one in Buckinghamshire. But then for whatever reason, the plans fell through, and by the following year, the company had moved to a place, another airfield, which is fairly well known in Northern Ireland and is still being used for the company, Langford Lodge on the edge of Lough Neagh, still there. So by all accounts, the airfield, which by that time had already been relinquished by the government of the day in the spring of 1957, it was by all accounts sold in March 1960. Now, I've been here quite a few times over literally the decades. The last time I was majorly here was in November 1991. Now, I should have said as well, although I obviously can't promote this, that I'm also in a separate but related capacity, a fairly well-known published author on UK airfield history. So in my second book, I've actually written the history, along with hundreds of others, for Ballyhalbert and for that matter as well Ballykelly. So I know this area pretty well for an outsider. But just to put that in quick perspective, when I was last majorly here, that was just a year after my first book was published, and it was about 14 and a half years before the charity was formed in the early part of 2006. So just to let you know that what we mainly do with our charity, this obviously helps your community and further afield, family and friends and so on, is that we operate in four main fronts. Our memorials, we try and help save airfields as well in various ways. And it's been so evident just in this trip alone. Ballykelly, the two Lough Erne flying boat bases, and as I've known for years here, that we've really got to do something to try and help save our airfields. I'll come by that in a second. Then we also, of course, try and help people in all sorts of ways. We're doing a lot of work at the moment too with family, uniting or reuniting families. Quite incredible. People from the other end of the world getting in touch with us, and we're actually uniting them, even if it's just, unfortunately, trying to trace, for example, graves. So there's that, and then also we carry out incredibly deep level research into the UK's airfields, not just do the history and so on, but also, this is a crucial point, the social impact of our airfields. And again, with here at Ballyhalbert and other three airfields, this is so evident in all sorts of ways, and people are really picking up on this general concept now. And that's why we can only just say to you, just within reason of course, that please do all you possibly can to help save, protect, honour and respect not only all of the UK's airfields, active and disused, but also of course all the very brave personnel and their families who either served here or have been associated with here. They are phenomenally important in our everyday lives, right across the board. Jobs, facilities, services, every walk of life, even right down to our health. That's how important they are. So please just do all you reasonably can to help these places, because for all of us, ourselves, our families, friends, society in general, we just cannot remotely afford to lose these places. Because if we did, if airfields in the UK theoretically never existed, our lives would be at the very least immeasurably impaired, if not completely impoverished. They are hugely important beyond all belief. And therefore, again, thank you all very much for coming. And we are greatly honoured to be unveiling what is now ABCT's 165th memorial. We've already supplied in readiness over 200 across the UK, going as fast as we can with this, to in this case yet another of the UK's absolutely priceless and irreplaceable assets, the one and only Ballyhalbert Airfield. Thank you all very much. Thank you very much.